Welcome to the latest episode of Newy Tech People with Andrew Mears, CEO and founder of SwitchedDin. Thanks for the time, Andrew.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Local success story in Newcastle. Startup, or what was a startup, is continuing to grow.
Scale up now.
I think, it's a success, that's for sure. So for the people that haven't heard of you or heard of SwitchedDin, can you give us a quick overview of who you are and then where SwitchedDin is?
Yeah, so look, I'm an engineer. I've been working in renewable energy for a long time. The idea for SwitchedDin grew out of experience working around the world, solving problems in renewable energy sector.
Yeah.
And coming back to Australia, seeing what amazing potential that sector's got. You know, we've got the highest penetration of solar energy in the world. Like I think we just hit 2 million homes with solar on their rooftop.
Yeah.
Yet we're still pretty well passive consumers of energy and these fantastic enabling renewable energy products. So the whole notion of SwitchedDin tried to address some of the barriers there to us doing new and more innovative things with our renewable energy. So we solve a problem in terms of scaling small-scale distributed energy resources. And that's really solar and batteries, but also key loads that are important, such as air conditioners and pool pumps and electric vehicle charging points. And what we do is we have an industrial Internet of Things solution, which enables us to connect up all those different devices in your home and then coordinate them, firstly, to help you reduce your electricity costs, but then also to enable us to orchestrate those systems across the fleet. Now, that's really useful if you're a utility and you want to try to improve the way the electricity grid works. And that can unwrap new revenue opportunities for the owners of these systems.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So obviously you've done the thing across the world and you've seen this problem. How did SwitchedDin come about? How do you turn your knowledge of a problem into a business?
Yeah, well, look, where we are now isn't where we started. Yeah. Being an engineer, I always had a couple of fancy algorithms in the back of my mind that I'd been working away at, and I thought that, wow, you just got to bring a sexy algorithm into the marketplace and the world will just be your oyster. Well, but then when we try to do it and you work out, actually, there's other bits and pieces of this puzzle that need to be in place before your sexy algorithm actually matters at all.
Yeah.
And those other problems are the problems that people are really concerned about. So early on, we pivoted from being a sexy algorithm company with, machine learning and smart predictive algorithms to being a company that really solves some pretty boring but fundamental problems about communicating with and controlling lots and lots of small systems.
Yeah.
So, so it's been trial and error. We've done that was a reasonably big pivot. But we've done a bunch of small pivots since then. So it's been a learning journey of success and failure and success and failure, and that's where we are.
That's a start story. What's the biggest challenge that you face today?
The biggest challenge, I guess the thing that keeps me awake at night is that we are a small startup and we are working with some of the biggest companies in Australia. Big power companies, network operators.
Yeah.
How do we keep our identity? How do we keep our product, our positioning? That's the biggest challenge I face. Branding's one thing, but just positioning and being able to claim a space is, for a new startup in this type of sector, is a big challenge.
That would be a big challenge, and I guess it's an evolving challenge, right? As your company evolves and the industry evolves and there's new players, I guess it'll be something a big continual challenge, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, we're the shiny new toy in the marketplace, and that's easy for a startup compared to a big entrenched incumbent.
Yeah.
But eventually, we're going to become business as usual. How do we keep the ball rolling? So that's that's what keeps me awake at night.
It's interesting. It's interesting. And you made mention before about, back in the algorithm days, machine learning and AI and things like that. Would that be part of growth plans for SwitchedDin? Is that those sort of options? What's SwitchedDin look like in 5 years' time if you had to have a guess?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we do have those fancy, shiny algorithms, sexy algorithms. So I mean, once we sort of got traction solving those boring, painful problems that everyone was worried about, we of course started to bring in the value add of machine learning, predictive forecasting. So for us, that means having a learning system that learns how people consume electricity. And at the same time, forecasting what we think the solar generation is going to be on the site. And if you know in advance about changes in people's behaviour or changes in generation, then you can optimise the way you use the battery and the way you manage your electricity loads. So yeah, that's I guess that's part of our secret sauce now moving forward. And I guess the strategy, our strategy will be to become even smarter and better at that, and stay ahead of the large incumbents.
Yeah, well, and that's always a challenge, right? Because obviously if they're seeing you take a share or create a market for yourself, they're going to see an opportunity there and then try to play in that space. So that'd be a very real challenge going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's fortunately, it is so dynamic, and the market. It's not just market opportunities now. It's also the whole political dimension to renewables in Australia and around the world. There's global imperatives that are driving this.
Yeah.
So it's not going to slow down soon. And I guess the challenge for innovators in this space is to keep picking those leading edge problems and keep moving quickly. So far we're doing really well, and I think we're going to be able to keep that ball rolling for a long time.
Yeah, that's exciting. That's growth from, let's call it a product perspective. I know from a geographic perspective, we've discussed before off air about SwitchedDin's growth. We're no longer Australia only. Care to share that story for our listeners?
Yeah, well, we've in June, July this year, we launched with one of our partners in Germany. And that's a product that they're going to market through Europe. So in that case, we're embedding our software inside a battery system that's really got terrific potential. With another partner, we're going to be launching in a similar way in North America, January, February next year. And we've just started market development activities in India.
Wow.
Although that is as much about finding global partners as anything. So large companies who are interested in helping us take this product to the world. So we're also working with, just in terms of global outreach, with some large smart meter manufacturers. In fact, the largest in the world, a company called Landis+Gyr.
Yeah.
And so the promise there is to really go to global markets with those types of partners. So it is about channels for us, and managing those is going to be crucial. Fortunately, Australia is about the best country in the world to be doing this sort of stuff. So we've still got a lot of work to do here. Absolutely.
Yeah, so prove it here and then use your partners from a growth perspective for international opportunities.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, just because of the market context here and the high level of penetration, this is the test market for the world. So everyone is here trialing their products because they want lessons that they're going to take elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in this enviable position is that we're already here and we understand it.
Yeah.
So we're building products in the Australian market which translate very nicely into most of the other major markets around the world. So
it's an exciting story.
Yeah.
Exciting story. Mate, let's pivot slightly from SwitchedDin to yourself. Come from an engineering background. Prior to that, went through university, you've done a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD. Is that right?
Yeah, glutton for punishment.
Yeah. Mate, let's say somebody else is, has an idea, can see where you are right now, and be like, I'd love to be where Andrew is one day. Mate, what's your opinion on formal education as a stepping stone?
Yeah, well, look, I'm older than most startup founders, probably. But I've always followed my gut and my passion, and there's been a pretty consistent stream, sort of linking technology and development and environmental challenges. So, right from the early days, as an engineer at BHP, I was acutely aware of the tensions between the two, industrial development and environmental issues.
Yeah.
And that drove me to really explore other dimensions. And engineering is such a creative and enabling profession. It's a terrific, without that grounding, that academic training, it'd be pretty hard to engage with the sorts of technologies that are going to be driving change and impact in these big issues.
I completely agree. And also provides a platform for when you are having conversations you're having now to have that strong base to work upon. Obviously put you at an advantage, I would think.
Yeah, that's right. I also probably took an unorthodox approach through my postgraduate studies, in that they were always closely linked with applied problems in industry and technology innovation. So my master's, for example, was working with a company, making control systems, solving problems around solar PV panel manufacturing. My PhD was a bit of a shift away. It was biomedical, but again, I was working with a company that was building new implantable devices. And so, again, it was around the leading edge of innovation and commercialization.
Yeah.
It was a great way to build my skills, become, an expert in an area, but at the same time, be outside the box, I guess, not your classic academic type of PhD.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? Is that, as you said, solving real world problems, using that education, using that and making that linkage between formal education and real world problems and linking those up. I think that's that's the key for people going forward as well. Is looking at how you can actually do that. And it's a key for education providers, I think, is to make sure that education does link up to being able to solve real world problems.
Absolutely. In Australia, we're not really, I think we're only just starting to make the most of our PhDs, for example. Traditionally, it's been a path into academia rather than a path into industry and innovation. Those two paths have always been there, but foremost in people's minds, it wasn't always about going into tech innovation.
Yeah.
So I think that's changing. Certainly, for example, in SwitchedDin, I'm pushing my team to continue to develop themselves and study and engage. And probably one of our best engineers is probably going to leave us next year and go and start his PhD, and that's perfect. That's great.
Well, it's one of those things. If all works out well, you might be back at one point in time and have a new skill set or new knowledge to also be able to provide. So
yeah.
What goes around outside of formal education, when you're talking about either yourself or your employees, is there any other avenues that you'd encourage people or that you've found valuable outside sort of formal universities? Are we talking?
Oh yeah, don't follow the path well trodden. Yeah. Find your own path. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've a few times through my career, I've taken significant pivots personally, and it's in hindsight, I can see a fairly consistent, values driven, path that I've taken. but don't be afraid to step outside of the normal pathway.
Yeah, and give something a try, right? Like as you said, I would say out of most startup or entrepreneurs, you haven't followed a traditional path. Not that it really is a traditional path, but if you had to say there's a startup path these days, people are talking about uni dropouts and people like that have gone and created their own company. You've obviously been successful going your own path and finding your own way. So I think it's a testament to say, hey, there is no one right path to create a startup or a successful startup, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and other people's, these are the stories, uni dropouts, starting thing. I mean, fine. I mean, that worked for those people. Don't assume it's it's a strategy that's going to apply to your own choices. Just yeah. I mean, that's uni. I found my university education to be invaluable.
Yeah.
I've never stopped learning, even on the job. Whether that's informally, just being open and engaging with mentors who might be older or younger than yourself, might be from different backgrounds. You've got to be ready to accept that you don't know everything, and that's what lifelong learning is all about.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I'd love to touch on that. If you had to give advice for somebody to try to find a mentor, so I think mentorship is obviously invaluable. You've made really strong mention of it there. If you had to give advice to somebody, how would they go about finding a mentor or finding the right person?
I mean, you've got to network, yeah, and then you've just got to ask people. I think in getting SwitchedDin started, I mean, I know a lot about renewable energy, yeah, and I've started businesses, but there was some very different things about SwitchedDin, raising early stage capital, things like that, which I had not done before. So I really needed some guidance. Now, in all the people that I asked for a coffee to pick their brains for half an hour, I was never ever turned down, not once. And I would say I bought hundreds of people coffee.
Yeah.
I've never ever been turned down. So people are it's human nature, I think, to want to engage with passionate people, because you've almost always got something interesting to say if you're passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you've got a passion and you want to develop yourself, and you think that you found someone who might be able to help you, or you might not even know whether they can help you, but they've done great things, just ask them.
Yeah. That's a great answer. If I had to talk that slightly more specific in crafting a message, I think it's a phenomenal story, and it does come down to sheer numbers, right? If you're having that many coffees, that many relationships, opportunities will present themselves. If you have to create, how does somebody go about actually creating that message to say, hey, I would like X amount of your time. You're obviously talking about some busy, successful people. I imagine that you'd be hit up yourself about, you're having some success. You're a busy man at the moment. You've only got so many hours in the day. What's the differentiator for you to accept a copy versus this seems like it might be a waste of my time or not something I can pursue right now?
I think if there's someone who you think you'd like to learn something from, I think you've got to be prepared to build a relationship. So, don't just ask them cold, come and mentor me and whatever. I think start by offering them something. A coffee is a good start. A few people will turn you down for a coffee, but what they're really looking for is a slice of your passion. Yeah. So, and have some, go into it with an ask. Yeah. If you ask them something which is meaningful to you, then they'll see that you value the time you're spending with them. Yeah. If you just want to have a chat, and you haven't prepared or you haven't come into it in a way which they can see is important to you, then they're not going to think you're valuing the time that you spend with them.
It's great advice. Great advice.
So the key thing is, make sure that you clearly value the time that they give you, and they'll give you more time.
Yeah, and as you said, provide a little bit of value. Make sure you've done your research. If you can provide a little bit of value, buy a coffee, that type of thing. I think it's the small things that matter, right? And it's the intent behind it. Say, hey, you have done your research. Just catching up for a chat.
That's right. And if it's not a good fit too, just politely leave it and come back later on. It might not be a good fit right then and there, but that's just the first touch. Come back again later on with another question or another coffee, and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I think some listeners could get some really good handy hints out of that. You've got a wealth of experience, and you've done a lot of travel lately. From an educational standpoint, like outside of formal education, outside of education, but we're talking about reading books or podcasts, are there things that you're a continual learner, or somebody that's never stopped learning? Are there books or podcasts out there that you listen to on a regular basis, or a book you've read recently that you would recommend for people?
I'm reading a book at the moment called How Not to Give a Shit. Really good book, actually. Yeah. You look. I don't read a lot of sort of management books and things like that. I've read all the usual sort of startup things, lean startup, and that's been great. I like going to meetups, especially at the start. Just being part of the local ecosystem, connecting with events and contributing. Yeah. So being able to sort of put yourself out there and do that pitch when it was the scariest thing in the world, those really create so many great learning opportunities.
And then any podcasts or any other things you use from an educational perspective, or blogs? I follow, just in general, I get my weekly Crunchbase report. It's great to see what's actually happening. Follow the money usually tells you where things are happening, as well as sort of the domain media. Yeah. Renu Economy is great for the Australian context here in Australia. Nice, mate. That's good. And actually may mention it there, just some domain-specific content is always valuable, right? Yeah. Find out what else is going on and get out of your own bubble sometimes, which is helpful. So you've gone on all this learning. What if you had to wheel it back and say what's a key learning that you teach a younger version of yourself? You've pivoted a number of times. You've learned a number of things. Is there any sort of key information you'd turn a younger Andrew Mears?
I probably should have done this sooner, I reckon.
What stopped you doing it sooner?
Well, I had other great jobs.
Yeah.
So I was never unhappy with it, but, I just, I guess my expectations around the impact that I can have or the contribution I can make through this type of vehicle, it's exceeded my expectations, right? So, my previous jobs were, working, with the UN and World Bank and NGOs all around the world, and that's definitely a pathway to have an impact. I was always interested in how private sector and tech innovation can contribute to addressing some of these big environmental challenges. And I guess I've been pleasantly surprised that SwitchedDin and this sort of model for having an impactful life, it's exceeded my expectations. So I guess, younger Andrew Mears, I probably would have said do this sooner.
Yeah. And it's hard, as you said, you made mention there, you weren't unhappy in a role. And I think there's a lot of people that are out there and they're like, I'm okay with my role. I don't hate my role, so I don't need to leave and scratch my own itch. But there is that sort of that itch there or a desire there or an idea that you want to explore, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, it always takes something to sort of kick off a change, because you get comfortable, whether that's good comfortable or lazy comfortable. I don't know, but at some point something kicks you in to have to change. Yeah, for me, I wasn't unhappy doing what I was doing. I was just looking for a way to make a better impact, cut down on the travel a little bit, but that doesn't really work out that way either. And look, it's not like this was an overnight decision either. I had the idea for SwitchedDin was burning away in the back of my mind for 10 years, got to a position where it was a good opportunity, and so took a leap.
Nice. You may mention travel just then. You may mention previously about local startups. A topic you and I are both passionate about is the Newcastle tech scene.
Yeah.
Someone like yourself to grow, it would have been very easy for you to grow a startup somewhere else, right? Newcastle's got some challenges. Hey, what's your thoughts on the current state of the Newcastle tech scene or startup scene?
Newcastle's my hometown,
Yeah.
right? So I've got a long-term connection, but I was away for 20 years. Came home 6 years ago. 4 years ago, started SwitchedDin. And even at that stage, there was very, compared to what was going on in Sydney and Melbourne, it was absolutely nascent. In that 4 years, we've seen really Newcastle develop a very strong and respected identity as a regional startup hub. Now, people say regional because they don't really understand what's happening here, right? Yeah. Regional is not less than, capital city, right? It's just different. And I think the key qualities there are that we have this amazing pool of talent that don't want to leave. Yeah. They don't want to have to go away somewhere else.
Yeah.
We've also got regional comparative advantages. And fortunately for me, a big slice of that is around the resource sector and energy.
Yeah.
And logistics. But, we've got proven track records in a whole range of different areas. We've got great universities. We've got, CSIRO here. So again, which is relevant to my area.
Yeah.
We've got terrific medical research groups. There's all the essential ingredients. Yeah. But I think the best thing for me is that it's sort of the perfect size. It's a Goldilocks town in the sense that, it's not too big that you can't be known,
yeah.
And it's not too small that you can't find everyone you need. Yeah,
I agree.
So, look, I've been asked a number of times by investors and customers why we're in Newcastle, and I can't think of a reason why we shouldn't be. It's a great place.
It is a great place, and I think as you said, it's growing. The tech scene is growing. The startup scene is growing.
Yeah.
You're a co-founder and current director of 1804.
Yep.
Mate, do you want to give people, just the people that don't know of 1804, a quick overview of?
Quick plug.
Yeah. A, what it is, and then B, where it came from.
Yeah. Well, look, 1804. I co-founded with James Giblin. James was himself looking to start a venture, and I was kicking off SwitchedDin. All this great talent in town, and we were both trying to find people to work with. Co-working spaces were a bit too generic for us. We really thought there was an opportunity to build a community around clean tech and smart cities. And so that's how it really got started. We got $15,000 from the city to kick it off. We had premises lined up in the CBD, but that fell through. And fortunately, CSIRO gave us a bit of office space to get started. we filled that space in 3 months. And it took us then another 18 months to find where we are now, which is a great building on the TAFE campus in Newcastle West. And so that we now house 8 different companies, 45, I think, employees. So 45 jobs that wouldn't otherwise be here, tech jobs. I think we did a back of the envelope sort of aggregate valuation of around $70 to $80 million worth of companies.
Yeah. So
it's been terrific. I think part of the key, and the key differentiator is that it's really just very much focused on growth startups in the clean tech and smart cities space. And I think that resonates a lot also with the direction the city's going, the local council. Big commitment in this space. In parallel, of course, there's been all these other great initiatives coming up in the ecosystem more broadly, and anyway, it's a very exciting time, and I think 1804 is going to be a part of it for some time.
I completely agree, and I think it's just a testament to the people involved, but also just to the fact that can be successful in Newcastle. Yeah, and that's a pretty niche market, right? And to say that success and to lead to $70-80 million valuation of companies in a 3-4 year period is pretty phenomenal when you have a look at that.
Yeah, and I think that's about to skyrocket too, because a lot of those companies are just hitting growth stage,
high growth,
and so we're going to see big shifts. But look, we're keen to grow. There's a whole couple of floors left in that building we've yet to fill, so we're always on the lookout for other companies who are interested in joining, or people or individuals who are just ready to make a start and want to be part of a group of people who are thinking of that.
I agree. Slightly off tangent, same subject. If somebody was to do something similar to 1804 in a different demographic or different industry, how would you, if you had to say some advice for them to get something like that off the ground, is there any advice you would give?
I think there needs to be a good reason to do it where you're doing it. Certainly in the case of 1804, there was clear links with sort of the regional's comparative advantage. So that's a good reason to choose a particular vertical if you want to focus on a particular vertical. Otherwise, you really, you need, or you need to have some, a large enough group of people who are going to create that or build that straight off. So, the success of 1804, I think, basically is because we built on the back of existing capabilities in the region. I don't know how it would have gone if, we perhaps were somewhere far out west in an agricultural area and we tried to, do the sort of vertical we had here. So, or if we tried to do fintech here or something like that, you've got to think, well, what connects that with this place?
Yeah, play to your strengths, play to the local strengths.
Yeah,
that's cool. Last question on Newcastle. Where do you see Newcastle in 5 years' time?
Well, look, in 5 years' time, I think we're going to see an amazing transformed city. The university's moving into the city in a big way. We're going to have a young, dynamic population who are tech savvy and well educated and have got global outlooks. I would like to see Newcastle really on the global map as an innovation centre. So I think it's going to be a major driver for local economic development. I think we're already seeing a lot of innovators exiting Sydney for regional centres, and I think that's a trend that's just going to grow and grow. And when you think about what we've got here, we've got great talent, great lifestyle. We're used to dealing with global markets. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you add on great opportunities, and and it's a full suite, right?
Yeah,
and that's probably what Newcastle had been lacking in the past, but those opportunities are really starting to come to fruition.
Yeah.
Nice. Anything else you'd like to share individually with about Andrew or SwitchedDin?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess a key part of the journey building SwitchedDin, and because I'm hoping that people who are interested in coming and working for us are going to listen to this, is that, and a key lesson I guess I've had is, you read these books and there's this catch cry, culture beat strategy, and frankly, I never really understood what that meant until SwitchedDin. And when you've got a team that everyone feels like they really own the business, and work happens, people get together, sort of almost just the intrinsic connections, and jobs get done, and the product sort of shapes itself almost, autonomously. It's just this, that's when you realize what that statement means. So you can spend all the time you want making business plans and doing strategic planning and all that sort of stuff, but if you don't have a culture that enables innovation to be core, and people have a sense that they own that whole process, it's not going to work. So fortunately, I think that's what we've got in SwitchedDin. So I'm really proud of what we've made, and people enjoy working there, and that's part of the secret to our success, I think.
Oh, it really is. And you couldn't have been on the growth curve you've had without that success, right? To be successfully building a culture, you wouldn't have had that growth you've had without it. So
absolutely,
that's the proof's in the pudding right there.
Yeah,
mate. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Great.